I was given 5 minutes to clear my desk before my husband's father, the CEO, dismissed me in front of the entire leadership team. Instead of breaking, I smiled and said, "Thank you." One by one, 22 colleagues quietly stood and followed me out. Chloe sneered until the legal director turned pale and whispered, "Get the lawyer now." 4 minutes and 30 seconds left, Julian announced to the room, his Rolex glinting as he tapped its face. I continued packing my desk drawer, pulling out 6 years' worth of work. Project files, team photos, the backup drive containing every system architecture I'd built for Apex Dynamics. The 12 executives watched in silence as I placed each item deliberately into my cardboard box. Chloe Vane leaned back in her chair, examining her manicured nails with practiced boredom. She thought she'd won. 4 minutes, Julian called out again, his voice sharp with authority. That's when Logan Mitchell stood up from his desk outside the conference room's glass walls, laptop bag already in hand. But I should explain how we got here, how 3 weeks of calculated betrayal led to this moment, where my father-in-law counted down my professional execution like a microwave timer. Intro. If you believe that dedication and hard work should be valued over office politics, please consider subscribing. It helps more people discover these important stories. Now, let's see what Julian had planned. It started at Sunday dinner at the Sterling estate. I'd arrived with Grant and my homemade apple pie. Eleanor Sterling always requested it, but never mentioned who made it, as if pies materialized from thin air. "Another record quarter for Apex Dynamics," Julian had proclaimed, standing at the head of the mahogany dining table. He raised his crystal tumbler. "We're dominating the market because I know how to recognize talent and put it where it belongs." His hand landed on Grant's shoulder with the weight of expectation. My husband glowed under the attention, though his contribution consisted mainly of having the right last name. Nobody mentioned the Henderson account I'd saved 2 nights before, or the fact that while Julian was at his country club, I was rebuilding our entire server infrastructure. "You look tired, dear," Eleanor had murmured, her diamonds briefly grazing my shoulder. "Perhaps you should consider better work-life balance. Appearance matters, especially for women in leadership." The truth was, I looked tired because I'd been awake for 36 hours straight. But admitting that would only prove their unspoken point, that I couldn't handle the pressure. The morning routine with Grant had become a study in marital disconnect. "Dad mentioned Chloe's been really impressive lately," he asked one morning. "She's been staying late, taking on extra projects." Chloe Vane, whom I'd been training for 3 months at Julian's specific request. "She just needs mentoring," he'd said. So I had opened my playbook, shared my strategies. She'd taken notes in her designer portfolio, asking questions that felt increasingly invasive. "How do you handle system failures? Who has administrative access?" I thought she was eager. Turned out, she was building a case. The server migration crisis should have been my moment of vindication. 7 days before Julian would slam his palm on that conference table, our entire data infrastructure needed emergency migration. 0 margin for error. Everything went wrong at once. By 10 p.m., I'd activated my emergency protocol, calling in my entire team. Logan arrived first, then Priya, Marcus, Sarah, the Morrison twins. They all came without question. We saved everything, every file, every client. Julian would never know we'd been 3 keystrokes from losing millions. That's what I did. I solved catastrophes so quietly that nobody knew they'd happened. Then came the email, the misdirected message from Chloe Vane to me. Except it wasn't meant for me. "Julian, as discussed, I've successfully salvaged the Henderson situation. I believe it's time to discuss restructuring. Elena seems overwhelmed. Fresh leadership would benefit the department." I read it twice, then 3 times. The Henderson situation, the one I'd personally managed while Chloe was posting Instagram stories. I forwarded it to my personal email. "Understanding finally." That dedication looked like weakness to those who'd never truly worked. 3 minutes, Julian announced now, his voice cutting through my memory. The executives remained frozen, but through the glass, I saw Priya standing up, then Marcus, then Sarah. One by one, my team, my chosen family, began to rise. The morning had started wrong from the moment I'd batched into the building. The security guard, usually chatty, had avoided my eyes. When I'd reached the conference room to set up my presentation, Chloe was already there, in my seat. "Oh, good morning," she'd said, that saccharine sweetness coating her words. "Julian asked me to review these before the meeting. You don't mind, do you?" She was scrolling through salary allocations and vendor contracts. 6 years of financial architecture. "How did you get access to those files?" I asked. She looked up, and for just a second, the mask slipped. "Julian gave me temporary admin privileges to help with the transition." Transition. The word hung there like a diagnosis. The room filled, but something was wrong. Margaret Lawson, our legal director, kept checking her phone, gripping her legal pad with white knuckles. I'd started my presentation anyway. I clicked through slides showing our wins. "As you can see, we've exceeded every target by..." The door didn't just open. It exploded inward. Julian stood there, his face that particular shade of red that appeared when his blood pressure medication wasn't enough. He crossed the room in 3 strides, his palm hitting the table with enough force to make everyone's coffee jump. "You have 5 minutes to clear your desk." The words didn't make sense at first. I stood there, presentation clicker still in my hand. Slide 17, still glowing on the screen behind me, a graph showing the money I'd saved this company. This wasn't spontaneous. This was orchestrated. I had been marked for execution. Chloe leaned back in my chair, examining her manicure with the satisfaction of someone admiring her own handiwork. But here's what 20 years in tech had taught me. The moment when you think you've won is usually when you're most vulnerable. "Thank you." The words came out clear. Julian's jaw went slack. He'd expected tears, pleading, anger, anything but gratitude. But in that moment, I felt relief. 6 years of pretending Grant's family accepted me. 6 years of being good enough to fix every crisis, but never good enough to belong. 1 minute, Julian announced, but his voice had lost its edge. Through the glass, Logan Mitchell was already packed. Then Priya stood. Then Marcus. One by one, like a slow wave building strength, my entire team rose. Julian turned to see what I was looking at, and his face went from red to white. "Time's up," Julian said, but it came out as a question. I picked up my box. As I walked toward the door, 2 security guards appeared. "Tom, Derek, I'm sorry about this," I told them. "Don't be," Tom whispered. "You're just doing your job." We walked toward the elevator. And that's when the symphony began. The squeak of chairs pushing back, the rustle of bags. By the time we reached the elevator, 22 people had joined our procession. Tom, the guard, stopped walking. "In 15 years," he said, his voice thick with respect, "I've never seen anything like this." Neither had Julian Sterling, whose empire had just started its collapse. The elevator doors closed on 22 people, and 1 security guard who looked like he'd just witnessed a miracle or a massacre. Tom pressed the lobby button with a hand that shook slightly. Nobody spoke during the descent. The only sound was the mechanical hum. And then, the phones. My phone, then Logan's, then Priya's. Like popcorn starting to pop, our devices erupted in a cascade of notifications. When the doors opened to the lobby, we walked out into the blazing midday sun. "This is insane," Priya whispered beside me. "This is justice," Logan corrected, shifting his laptop bag. We stood there in the parking lot, 23 people blinking in the harsh light. The Morrison twins were already on their laptops, sitting on the concrete median, typing furiously. Sarah had her phone pressed to her ear, explaining why she was suddenly unemployed at 11:47 on a Tuesday morning. The drive home took 17 minutes. My phone, tossed in the passenger seat, continued its electronic seizure. Grant's car was in the driveway. Of course, he worked from home on Tuesdays, a luxury Julian granted his son, but would never have considered for me. Grant met me at the door. "Why are you home? Are you sick?" Then he noticed the box. His face cycled through expressions: confusion, realization, then anger. "Dad called. He says you lost it in the meeting. Says you were unstable. Had to be escorted out by security." I set the box on our entryway table. "Is that what he said?" "He said you've been struggling lately," Grant continued, "that Chloe had to cover for your mistakes, that he had no choice." I pulled out my phone and found the forwarded email. Chloe's email, the one calling me overwhelmed. Grant read it once, then again. His jaw muscle twitched. "This is..." he started, then stopped. "When did she send this?" 3 weeks ago. Accidentally sent to me instead of your father." "Would you have believed me, Grant? Or would you have said Julian would never plot against his own daughter-in-law?" The silence stretched between us like a contested border. Grant ran both hands through his hair. "I need to think," he said, grabbing his keys. I need to think." The door closed with a decisive click. I stood in our entryway, surrounded by a life built on a foundation of sand. My phone rang. Unknown number. I swiped accept. "Please don't hang up." It was Margaret Lawson, the legal director. Her voice was a whisper. "I'm calling from the executive bathroom. Elena, your contract. The clause about hostile termination, Julian never read it. The humiliation multiplier alone puts your severance at $800,000. But with documented harassment and 22 witnesses, we're looking at millions." "Why are you telling me this, Margaret?" "Because in about an hour, Julian is going to realize what he's done. And when he does, he's going to blame me. I've covered for him for 12 years. But this is going to end my career." The call ended. My LinkedIn app showed 47 notifications. 3 competitors had already reached out. But one email made me stop breathing. Catherine Walsh, the venture capitalist who turned down Julian's pitch 6 months ago. Her message was 2 sentences. "Your team's loyalty is worth more than Apex's entire market cap. Let's build something." I was reading it for the 3rd time when the doorbell rang. Eleanor Sterling stood on my porch at 9 p.m., makeup smudged. "May I come in?" For the first time in 6 years, she looked fragile. She entered my home and stood awkwardly. "Nicholas, my husband, fired his own brother this way 20 years ago. Edward questioned a decision and Julian gave him 10 minutes to clear out. The family never recovered. I've watched him destroy people for decades, telling myself it was business. But watching him do it to you, someone who saved his company while he played golf, I can't pretend anymore." She pulled a folder from her bag. "This is a pattern, Elena. He chooses the easy path. He and Grant both. They'd rather destroy relationships than admit fault. I've enabled it for 35 years. And I'm sorry." She left the folder on my coffee table. Evidence of a pattern I'd been too close to see. My phone rang at 2:07 a.m. It was Margaret again, her voice high with hysteria. "Please tell me you're awake. Chloe destroyed everything." "What?" "She tried to prove she could handle your systems. She wanted to show Julian she didn't need you. She tried to access backup files, but she deleted the main customer database instead." I sat up, suddenly completely awake. "She deleted the entire database?" "That's not the worst part," Margaret gasped. "She tried to recover it herself. She ran some recovery software she found online. It corrupted everything. The entire East Coast operation has been dark for 6 hours." The silence stretched while I processed this. Our customer database was 17 years of relationship management, the DNA of the company. Conservative estimate? Margaret's voice cracked. $50 million in immediate losses, not counting the lawsuits. Chloe's in the bathroom crying. Julian is screaming at everyone. He threw a laptop at the wall. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Just a cold, empty nothing. Chloe had engineered my humiliation, and now she was drowning in her own incompetence. By noon the next day, my living room had transformed into a startup incubator. 22 people with laptops balanced on their knees, sitting on floors, and crowded around my dining table. Vanguard Digital, Priya announced, holding up a napkin where she'd sketched a logo, a stylized bird rising from flames. The energy was electric. We weren't just colleagues anymore. We were refugees from a corporate disaster. My phone buzzed at 4:47 p.m. It was Julian's lawyer. Ms. Vance, Mr. Sterling has authorized me to increase the offer to $800,000. The baseline severance assumes normal termination procedures, I replied, watching the Morrison twins carry equipment into our new warehouse office. Being given 5 minutes to clear my desk in front of 12 witnesses isn't normal. I suppose we'll let the courts decide. I ended the call just as a white Tesla pulled into the warehouse parking lot. Catherine Walsh stepped out, surveying our new space. A 20,000-square-foot concrete shell that still smelled of industrial cleaner. "This is perfect," Catherine announced. "It's hungry space. It wants to become something." She pulled out her phone. $3.5 million in seed funding. I want 20% equity and a board seat. I've seen 22 people follow their leader into uncertainty. That's worth more than any PowerPoint. The next morning, the contracts followed the talent. Richard Henderson, CEO of Henderson Corp., called me personally. "I heard about the database disaster, Elena. Chloe Vane tried to explain it to me. She actually cried on the call. We're moving our business to Vanguard Digital, effective immediately." By the end of the day, 3 more major clients had followed. Vertex, or Apex Dynamics, was down 15% in market value. Grant appeared in my doorway that evening, holding a bouquet of red roses. After 6 years of marriage, he still didn't know I was allergic to them. "Dad's willing to apologize," he said. "He'll give you an executive position, a 20% raise. It's a good offer, Elena." I didn't take the flowers. "He thinks this is about office space, Grant. He humiliated me. And you? You came home and asked me to fix his mistake instead of standing by me. You chose the easy path of family loyalty over doing what's right." "You're giving up on us?" he asked. "Your father didn't break us, Grant. You did." At midnight, an encrypted file arrived from Margaret Lawson. It was a recording of the emergency board meeting. The disgust in the board members' voices was palpable. "You turned a personal vendetta into a $50 million disaster," one shouted at Julian. The narrative had flipped. I stood in front of the cameras at our new headquarters the following afternoon. 2 weeks ago, I was given 5 minutes to pack. Those 5 minutes taught me that competence threatens the incompetent. Vanguard Digital is proof that culture beats strategy. Across town, Julian was holding his own conference. The news networks ran us on a split screen. Me, calm and surrounded by my team. Julian, red-faced and stammering. 3 days later, the news broke. Julian Sterling was removed as CEO. The the Sterling dynasty, had imploded. Eleanor filed for divorce. Grant was left picking up the pieces of a legacy that no longer existed. The warehouse hummed with productive energy as I looked at my team. We had reached a $50 million valuation in record time. It wasn't revenge. It was just success. The revenge was just a side effect. Julian had given me 5 minutes to pack my professional life. In return, I'd gained a real family, a company built on respect, and the knowledge that when you refuse to accept humiliation, you find dignity waiting on the other side. He's still trying to understand how 5 minutes destroyed his empire. I'm too busy building mine. If this story of corporate karma had you rooting for justice, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when 22 employees silently stood up and followed her out. What was yours? Drop it in the comments below, and don't miss more incredible stories like this. Subscribe to her hidden revenge.